I think I'm live. Yeah. Okay, cool. Stream health questionable. What? Oh well. Hey, it's me again. Skeptical Root, back from being not doing streams or videos or anything for quite a while. And now I'm doing updates again, so I thought, you know what, let's check in. Let's do a quick stream. Let's talk about some things. And to talk about some things that I won't talk about. And why. Got my Sunday mug. I really like this mug. I think it applies to most internet culture. And an Ask FM question I had yesterday, I believe. Maybe that was this morning. The coffee is getting a bit cold because this is from the pot I made this morning. And I've already heated that up, but it's kind of, yeah, at some point I'll just, which way is this going to go? At some point I'll just chug it. In case you're wondering about the hat, spring is in the air, which typically means that I get some breakouts on top of my head, which I think you'd want to look at for an entire stream, just as the sebaceous glands begin producing more oil again, typically as humidity levels change and all this other kind of stuff. It happens all the time, even when I had hair. You just couldn't see it. But so today I thought I'd wear a hat, like you said, so you don't have to stare at it. But a couple of things I wanted to talk about, and one thing I wanted to get off right off the bat was regarding mass shootings, and I see a lot of people talking about them online, and I understand what they're doing, but I don't think it's productive, and I'm going to talk about why that's the case and how, in spite of their best intentions, I think that it becomes harmful in more ways than one, which I'll talk about shortly. I also want to talk about some of the changes to YouTube ad rules which have rolled out. Some channels, you know, Godless Cranium in particular was talking about how pretty much everything on his entire channel got demonetized. His entire channel was demonetized. He was kicked out of the ad program, although that may have been more related to some trolling, people who he made videos against who didn't like it, taking issue with his stance, which is really crappy and technically could, depending on the type of flags, that if they're just community guidelines strikes, it's not anything illegal, but certainly crappy. However, if they were DMCAs or something like that, it could be felonious. But we don't want to get into that. That's not necessarily what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about, though, is I've been saying for now 2 years, 3 years, that stuff like this was going to happen. It has been happening. YouTube is moving towards a model that, man, I'm peeking a lot here. YouTube is moving towards a model that encourages family-friendly entertainment. It's probably the best way to put it. I'm sure there's a couple other things I want to discuss, talk about, chat about. I am technically at work right now because I am also working on updating servers at my place of employment because it's my job. It's what I do. But I'll be doing that off camera because y'all need to see that. So let's talk about mass shootings and what I see revolving around the situations themselves, thoughts and prayers, all that kind of fun stuff. I hadn't really thought about this too much going into this because the particular impetus for this is the recent shooting in New Zealand, in Christchurch. I don't care who the guy was. I applaud anybody that did anything to minimize the ferocity of the attacks, and or did anything to discourage, dissuade, prevent more injuries and death from occurring. And of course, I feel, no, I'll be honest, I'm disconnected from this, and not because these people are Muslims, but because I don't know them. I think that there is, I intellectually know that this was a terrible event. This was horrible. That I do not want something like this to happen to me or my loved ones. But I'll be honest, and I think that there's a lot of rhetoric around the idea of people feeling bad about this type of stuff. I don't feel bad. I don't want it to happen. I will actively condemn it. I will do everything in my power to discourage it from happening anywhere at any time. But I'm this is going to sound very cold, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it because I am disconnected from it. And if it happened near me or to me, I would feel a lot worse. But I will say that something like this has occurred near where I live. Actually, in a place that my wife ended up working at, I believe the following year. But I still don't feel connected to it. And I don't want to be dishonest and say I feel awful for these families. I intellectually feel compassion for these people. And the things that they have gone through are horrible. But I'm just separated from it. And I think a lot of people are probably separated from it, but they know that what they're supposed to say is to condemn this stuff using words that are emotional because they know that should be emotional. But I think that leads people to be manipulative and to honestly be dishonest about topics like this. And I think that we need to be more honest about these things and not just say the right thing. Because I find it hard to believe that people who feel very passionate about things like preventing mass shootings or feeling terrible for the families that are involved in these things, if they honestly feel this terrible about things, they take no action for it, towards preventing it or towards making it better. I will admit I don't do a lot for it. I'm torn on the issue of even gun control in this country, mostly because I know that more people have guns in this country than need guns. And it is a terrible thing that mass shootings happen. But I also know a good deal of my family, extended family at this point, sustenance hunt. They have firearms because if they don't go hunting in deer season, they may not have a whole lot of protein through the winter because they live in poor areas with very little work sometimes, or they have long commutes to jobs that don't pay very well. And so people like that I know exist, and I know there are a lot of people that exist like that. And they should have every right to own a firearm to survive. That doesn't mean that, my neighbor across the street needs to have, I don't know that he does, but he doesn't mean that he needs to have 6 shotguns and 2 rifles and 4 handguns, Can he have them? Sure. Does he need to have them? Probably not. I've never seen him go hunting. I don't know that he has any firearms in particular. But, you know, I mean, if he was in a situation where he had to sustenance hunt, I don't know why he should be restricted from it. But at the same time, he doesn't need them, and I don't think that he should have them. He's probably never going to have to shoot an intruder breaking into his house. Which I think is a terrible excuse to have a gun anyway. But at the same time, on coming back on this tangential topic of gun control, a lot of the rhetoric I see around, you know, banning weapons and things like that, will say things like they will talk about assault weapons and you know, school shootings and things like that. But then they also reference things like suicides, which are not typically carried out with, I don't believe, things like assault rifles or assault weapons or that type of thing. They typically tend to be handguns. So I don't know. I am pro Second Amendment, but I am also pro people being reasonable about owning firearms. I can't ever see myself owning one. I grew up in a house where, you know, my mom was very anti-gun, but most of her brothers are hunters, and several of them were sustenance hunters, including ones that still might be today. And my dad grew up in a hunting family. They both grew up in rural Pennsylvania, you know, coal miners, or coal miners' kids. So they grew up with firearms, and they didn't want them in the house. And I've never had them. I have fired firearms. I've just never owned them. I don't know. I don't see a need for one. You know, I can't imagine a situation in my, you know, middle-class suburban life where I would need one. In the event of a zombie apocalypse, or, you know, some other post-apocalyptic scenario, I don't even know that they're the best weapon in the long term to have, because what happens when you run out of bullets? You know, you're going to go manufacture your own black powder, your own smokeless powder to even if you can cast new bullets. Unless you've got a supply that you can stay dry and will stay dry for years and years and years, and not begin to break down like it might very well do over a short period of time when exposed to oxygen. You know, a year out, a firearm I don't know is going to be that good. 2 years out, 3 years out, but I also do not expect to have to deal with a particular post-apocalyptic society where that would ever be an issue. In spite of the fact that people keep trying to start race wars, which aren't going to happen either. But directly to the topic of mass shootings. The continued conversations about them don't do a whole lot other than reinforce the celebrity that comes with it. If this helps at all. I just feel like this is a very white light, and I don't. You probably just, my source light is probably just too bright, and it isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. And the fact that this thing doesn't work very well. I have some LED lights up here that I used to be my main light, and then I just cranked the gain up on my camera to make it work. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference right now, but anyway, even people talking about condemning the shooter are directly contributing to the culture that glorifies the bad people. It's kind of like, you know, when you the idea of, you know, bad juju or karma or whatever. The more you engage with something, the more likely it is to come to pass or something like that. However that worked out for whatever reason. But very much like people on the identity. Now, I'll say people who, the identitarians on the left side of the political spectrum, have a far greater tendency to, first off, extrapolate from individuals, groups, characteristics. Although that has to do with any identitarian particular position. There is also a tendency there to, how do I phrase this properly? I would say that it is, hold on a second here. Boop, 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 boop. I lost my train of thought. Hold on, I'm trying to fix my... Here we go. This here, boop. And then we go to... Is this the right one? Yep, okay, that's the right one. Never mind. All right, so... what was I saying? Ticker's gone, but who cares? All right, so... man, I keep having these audio issues. Probably because I have too many tabs open. Just on this side, I got these. See if I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so starting here, I got these tabs, plus these tabs, plus all this stuff. So, a couple of tabs. In that browser, oh, you know what? I closed this other one. I didn't reopen it. But man, like that, the eyes look like they're really sunken in. Mass shootings. Man, I'm like, even when I'm even just thinking about the chat, which nobody's watching, so who cares? But even just thinking about the chat, I got distracted. Damn it, I can't watch the chat like that. Just throws me off. But as I was saying, so even publicly condemning this type of behavior and attitudes and things like that feeds into the narrative of the fame that these people, I don't want to call it fame, and I don't want to say these people, but the supposed fame that mass shooters are looking for, the glorification of it, because you're somebody talking about it, and if you're overstating a case, then you're feeding into the rhetoric from one side, which makes more people believe that stuff, and then they get all upset about it, and then people have to talk about that and then rebuttal because it's just crazy and it doesn't make any sense. You know, it'll go back and forth, and it just, even if you're not talking about the person in particular, not saying the individual's name, and honestly I don't even know what this guy's name was, and I don't really care. But talking about the particular incident lends to the thing that they claim, or the thing that people claim that they are looking for, which is that fame and that stuff. If we stop talking about that stuff, we make note of it, and we say stuff like, we need to make changes to keep this from happening, and then we do something about it, and we don't have to keep talking about it. There can be a last guy to get famous off of this thing. There doesn't have to be the next guy. Maybe we can do a little more of that and a little less of the whole, you know, well, you know, these memes and these 4chan edgelords are just like fueling the fire, and then people are being like, dude, what are you talking about? This making jokes is not the same thing as engaging in dangerous rhetoric or behavior, and What do you want me to do about it? You know? And then the argument back and forth, it's all feeding into this whole thing about people being crazy and not crazy about the topic and going too far. And you know what? At some point, you just got to shut up and realize that your conversations about it are part of the problem. It's not just, you know, the 4chaners and the memers and the people that you are pointing fingers at. It is you pointing this stuff out. You know, a meme is literally just a meme. A joke is just a joke until somebody says, I don't like that. And now you have a conversation. And now you have a long conversation about why that's a problem. You might change your mind, and you create 10 more memes off of it. Much like you can't solve racism by calling everybody a racist. You can't fix the problem of mass shooter fame by talking about them all the time. Just shut up. Yes, it's tragic. Yes, we need to stop it. We need to have examples of how this stuff is bad. And the rhetoric that individually leads to this stuff is minor. It comes down to filtering and processing and biases and all this other kind of fun stuff, which we all have to deal with at some point. But we don't all end up being mass shooters. I can watch the exact same stuff that this New Zealander guy did and come away with a completely different take on it. Be like, ha ha ha, that's funny, I get it. And he comes away with it he comes away from it with this idea that he needs to go shoot up a bunch of Muslims. That's awful. It's terrible. And it's got to stop. But it's not going to stop if we don't leave it alone. And I'm not saying leave it alone like don't do anything about it. But I mean stop making it famous. So we don't talk about this guy. Somebody knows who this guy is. And when someone says, oh, you know, Bob Smith, who shot up New Zealand, we all know about New Zealand. We all know about Christchurch. Doesn't fix anything. Now, because somebody knows, I know who the shooter is from Christchurch. But I don't care about it. I'm not going to watch the video. I'm not going to concern myself with his name. And I'm not going to talk about him in particular. And I haven't ever talked about any of the mass shootings that have gone on. And this particular incident, people are going out of their way, and I get it, to not talk about who he is. But they're not really fixing the problem. You know, it's like they're eating the ice cream but taking the label off of it so they don't know what kind of ice cream it is, but they're hoping to not gain weight. I mean, it doesn't work that way. You got to not have the ice cream. I love ice cream. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. So that we're clear, I'm not going to talk about these things. I've never talked about these things. And I only talk about it now because I see it happening, and I see the dialogue going on that's not helping. It's not fixing anything. It's not making things better. Let's make changes. Let's do what things we need to do to, you know, not just in our society, but I mean, like, you know, New Zealand, you know, immediately jumps on the let's ban assault rifles. What's an assault rifle? You know, the weapons don't have clear definitions. If they're going to do the kind of assault weapons ban they did in the U.S. where they name specific types of rifles, they just make different types of rifles. You know, if they're going to say, you know, guns with, you know, X number of rounds that have a fire rate of X fast or whatever, okay, I get that. That's at least tangible, and they can say, okay, well, you can't have a magazine that holds more than 15 rounds, and you can't fire more than, you know, in semi-auto, you can't fire faster than you can pull the trigger, or, you know, so like they have to be non-bump stock compatible or something like that. That makes sense, you know. But I don't know what they're going to do. And I don't know that something like that would necessarily work in the U.S. with so many guns. But I think one thing that we can do in the U.S. is encourage gun buybacks. Those seem to help do a lot in areas where they needed to reduce gun violence, such as New York City. They seem to help those quite a bit. Parts of California where they did gun buybacks, like in Los Angeles, they seem to contribute to a reduction in gun violence over time. Granted, people being more security aware and having, you know, overall better standard of living, and having less crime in the areas that they live in with greater policing have all also contributed to those things. But we have seen a steady decline in violent crime in the United States since the 80s, which is quite a while, most of my life. So that's it. That's all I'm talking about with this. I'm done. Wet my hands of it. I don't intend to talk about it anymore. I don't intend to rejoin this conversation at any point, because it's not useful, and it's not productive in a way that will change minds. That being different than certain other controversies that I've been following lately. Do I really want to deal with this? I probably should, because they're all people, for the most part, that I follow on Twitter or subscribe to their YouTube channels. This is the Platforming Bad Ideas. Started with the NonSequitur show, having Jean-Francois Guéripi on. And JF is a radical racist, ethno-nationalist, Quebecois YouTuber who has said that he is, you know, engaged in relationships with less than fully mentally capable women. In one case, he is alleged that he attempted to impregnate one particular woman, in order to stay in the U.S. He has personally said, from my understanding, because I don't follow him, because I really don't like his attitudes or his opinions, that it has happened more than once. It's kind of his MO. But I don't know that, because I don't know. I'm not personally involved with his relationships or his any of that stuff. So I do know that he has openly expressed white nationalist, ethno-nationalist views, and I don't agree with any of that. But he was on the NonSequitur show, and that stirred up some controversy because Jean-Francois and the other guest, I just saw the name today and I can't think of what it is. Hold on. It was Psychopaths, I believe, who was a black nationalist, from my understanding of it. I didn't watch their stream. I just followed the controversy afterwards. And some of the conversations that went on about platforming people with generally speaking important views. In particular, Jean-Francois, because not only is he an alleged rapist, and yes, alleged because he hasn't had any convictions for rape, although some of the things have been rather dubious, which he admits to, but I don't know what the findings of fact for the courts were with those regards. So I'm not going to weigh in on the merits of that, other than the fact that there have been allegations that people would claim to be rape that he does not deny. So, all gone. So, I'm not a big fan of Jean-Francois. JFG, I don't know, JF is pretty much what he goes by. His ideas are pretty bad. But he's an ethno-nationalist, which is why they had him on, white ethno-nationalist, which is why they had him on NonSequitur to talk about that. And they didn't particularly stay on topic, but oh well. And so the idea was that they shouldn't have even had him on because of these other allegations. Those are accusations against him. But that's not what he was on there to talk about. He was on there to talk about white ethno-nationalism and the benefits of slavery, I believe is what the topic was. And it turned out that him and this other guy both, agreed that they should have ethno-states, and they turned the conversation back against Kyle and Steve with regard to the topics, and I don't know. I didn't watch it, but like I said, the point was that, was the conversation necessary, useful, should it have occurred in the first place? I fall on the side of we need to challenge bad ideas constantly. Those of us that choose to take on the mantle of trying to make sure people are correct need to be always vigilant and always on the let's do something end of the conversation. The fact that JF has had some other terrible things that he's done outside of the topic at hand, I don't necessarily think should disqualify him from basically getting an appropriate verbal beatdown on his views. I would say that it might have been more productive to have somebody who was less controversial, who shared the same views, but I don't know that is necessarily would have necessarily been possible or plausible or reasonable to find somebody, especially when JF was willing to go on. Having said that, I'm still in favor of, even if it goes horribly wrong, challenging people like this wherever you can find them, all the time, day in, day out, night and morning and after breakfast. Yes, the bad ideas get out there, but yes, the bad ideas also are challenged with good reasons, and hopefully with logical conclusions, so that people who don't know, or who are hearing them for the first time, or who might possibly be swayed by the arguments themselves, have a counter to those points. When someone comes up and says, well, why can't we have an all-white nation? What's Christianity and save the whatever, preserve Western culture through Christianity. You can understand what they're saying and have an argument against that. You as somebody who doesn't agree or who does agree, they can hear that argument at the same time that they hear the argument in favor of that thing. Someone can say, dude, it's just stupid because X, Y, Z. What do you do with people that are here now? These people contribute greatly to our society. They're functioning members of what we have. What did they do to deserve to be removed, and how is that any different than people who from other ethnic groups have done bad things, how that they should be removed and not be removed, and that's what prisons are for, and blah blah blah, all that whole thing, you know. Anyway, I'm always in favor of platforming. More speech, not less. Always more speech, not less. More free, open speech, not less. If somebody does not want to talk to JF, or doesn't want to talk to... Whoa. Camera focus. Oh, you know what? I forgot to turn autofocus off. That's going to keep going in and out unless I do that. Hold on. Is that one? Yep, that one. And then that. Uncheck. Unsave. There we go. That's better. Okay. Yeah, so if you don't want to talk to them, don't. If you don't want to watch their streams, don't. If you don't want to engage in that particular rhetoric or hear about it or watch it or anything like that, then don't. It is the same argument that you would make to somebody saying, you know, well, why are they going to put all these Christian movies on around Christmas time? If you don't want to watch them, don't watch them. Just turn the TV off, change the channel, put on something else. It's the same thing. You got, if people are going to have freedoms to if we're going to allow people to have freedoms in one arena, we need to give people freedoms in all aspects of that arena, or we just end up with one-sided conversations. Imagine if under Nixon had decided that only, you know, conservative talking points were moral enough for television and passed rules that prevented people from hearing opposition views. What would America look like now? Do you think we would have had Watergate? Do you think that Nixon could have been in there for 8 years and the things he might have done differently? I don't know. Imagine if now Trump gets up there and says, you know, hey, let's whatever this, you know, because I mean, Trump's probably more likely to do it than I don't know if Trump's more likely to do it than Nixon was. Nixon was at least a little smarter about his communications. He just wasn't good about recording stuff. You know, you get into a position where Trump is the one making that decision for all my left-leaning friends. Is that acceptable? Because if you want to put yourself in a position where you block out or segregate or conceal conservative talking points, you're not always going to be in power. And the seeds of revolution are always sowed through dissent. And if you make dissent illegal, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. Even if you do it because you want to steal, you want to freeze out the opposition, you're not helping yourself. Last thing I want to talk about. If it's the last thing I want to talk about, maybe it's the last thing I want to talk about. Something else I'm going to talk about. I had thought about talking about something that happened in one of the conversations about this to platform or not to platform thing. I feel like every time I tip my head down, you guys can't see my face because I'm kind of hiding like this. Is that better? There. So, how do the kids wear them these days? Yeah. I keep wanting to do that now because the light is so it's too much. I have a filter, or not filter. I have that translucent fabric that they use on light boxes. They bought 5 feet of or whatever. The intention was to build a screen that goes in front of this light. And I haven't done that yet. And part of the reason I haven't done that is because I have to build something and I've just been too lazy. But I probably need to go to the hardware store and buy some parts. Probably just some, you know, one by or something like that. Just to make up like a rather thin frame and stick it up there, and light will shine through it and filter, but it'll also diffuse a little bit. I just haven't done it yet. I had the stuff for months, you know. I got the stuff when I got my green screen, which is over there in the corner. Behind my slightly smaller pile of boxes, because I have actually started taking some of that stuff, and this shelf over here I'm starting to clean off because I'm tired of looking at it. But the whole point behind collecting boxes like this was to be able to put stuff away and sort things and put things up. So yeah, eventually I'll go through this stuff over here and get into that. Not today. Yeah, not today. So, having said that, there was something I thought about touching on, but I've decided that I don't need to get into that because it was, you know what, it was something that bothered me, and I don't know the person involved. I don't follow their YouTube channel, and I don't follow their Twitter, partly because they're far more identitarian than I am, left-leaning identitarian, and I understand that the position that they took, I understand why they take that position. I just don't think that it's fair is probably the right word. I don't think that their position is fair in their characterization, because they were willing to take somebody at their word in one instance, but not take them at their word in another instance regarding the same thing, and that bothered me. But no, I'm not going to go into it. It's not necessarily relevant to. It would really just be me griping about something. I didn't like the way somebody said something or handled something, and it's not a big picture thing. And I want to try to stay in big picture things, such as big picture things. YouTube ad changes, their monetization rules change. And I've been saying now for a couple of years that one thing that we have to look forward to with YouTube monetization is what YouTube's going to end up being is television. They want to they want to integrate their video services with television or television-like services. Part of the reason for that is, and I'll reiterate this for the people in back because sometimes people don't understand this. Television makes money. Television makes lots of money. It's the reason why people make TV shows. It's the reason why Netflix has all of their own original series, even though they just cut a bunch of them. I think they overextended in some of those things, but Amazon does their own unique TV shows. Netflix has their own series. Hulu makes their own, plus all of the channels out there that make their own TV series. TV makes money. When people talk about a change in viewership from previous years, previous quarters, what they're talking about is cable subscriptions most of the time. Over-the-air broadcasts are not necessarily having less impact revenue-wise, but a lot of people are shifting to streaming services. I personally went from a cable package that was way too expensive for basically for the two channels that we watched when my kids were growing up. It was Nick Jr. and probably lifetime for my wife. And I kind of fell out of watching TV after my kids were born. I just don't really watch a lot of it now. Most of my content now is YouTube, other than I listen to the news while I try to nap some days. Any nights that I don't get enough sleep. Next day I try to take a nap around news time after dinner, half hour or so. But I'll put on the news, CNN or MSNBC or local news, depending on the time, and I'll listen to it, but not really listen to it. And so it does have some value to me. But the number of the amount of screen time that people have for entertainment purposes has not changed much in the last 20 years. Since the advent of cable, people have just shifted from watching cable to watching computer stuff and streaming services and YouTube. If you look at the data, quarterly data, year over year for profits from TV stations, they're pretty much a slope upward. Most major players had a hit for overall revenues for 1 year between 2014 and 2016, I want to say, where they had 1 year with a drop. But that's typically as services transitioned, or with buyouts, or transfers, or new ownerships, or things like that. But overall, they keep making money, and YouTube wants in on that. YouTube has wanted in on that because YouTube has never made money. Never made money. Oops. And I've been saying this pretty much since I started my channel. YouTube is trying to push content towards what would fit U.S. broadcasting standards. Or probably broadcasting standards for your area. But for the most part, U.S. broadcasting standards, because we tend to be a little more puritanical. And ad revenues for TV shows still bring in lots of money. Because TV makes money, and people watch during prime time. And if people can make primetime content for YouTube, YouTube wants that. If they can make family-friendly content for YouTube, YouTube wants that. YouTube wants to draw people in from the regular TV market and move them into YouTube. But there are certain types of content that TV has worked out do very well and are very advertiser-friendly and will bring in revenue. And that's what they want. So you look at their problems with content, you look at their problems with language, you look at their problems with themes, and things like that in the YouTube space. YouTube is discouraging that type of content by demonetizing it or making it easy to demonetize that content. And they're promoting the more family-friendly stuff. YouTube is the Wild Wild West, but it can only be the Wild Wild West if you don't want to make money from YouTube on it, because major advertisers don't want to risk involving themselves with that content if it could cause them problems. So they're looking for TV content. Stuff that you could literally take from YouTube, content-wise, not necessarily length-wise, but content-wise, and put on a major network. Because that's the type of stuff that the networks make and that the advertisers will pay for. They've worked it out. They've got their specific agreements and whatnot, and they're trying to move them over to making content and money off of that content, because advertisers are safe with it. There's little risk or less risk. They don't have to think about it when they put an ad on Friends. They know what they're getting. They put an ad on 2.5 Men, they know what they're getting. They put an ad on insert some other TV show because I don't watch them anymore, so I don't even know what's on anymore. They know what they're getting. YouTube will reward that type of content on YouTube because they want to do the same thing. So if you're a content creator on YouTube, here's my advice to you. If you're not making a lot of money, I almost say you should pull out of your AdSense deal because, and this is something that came up at one point, probably the last time I talked about this, where videos that get demonetized get a certain flag in the metadata that removes them from searches or something like that, or changes how the search algorithm works for them. But if the content is never monetized, it never gets that flag, and so it just falls under the normal content guidelines. So it'll get promoted, it'll get, recommended, it'll get whatever based on what it is and not based on its advertiser friendliness. YouTube may have changed that at some point, but I don't think it would make sense for them to do that because, frankly, how much do they really care if they don't have to worry about it upsetting advertisers? They have their algorithms in place. They have then a layer on top of that to watch for potentially bad content that might offend their advertisers. But if it's not monetized, they don't have that concern. And they're not necessarily incentivized to promote it, but at the same time, they're not disincentivized to remove it from the algorithms. It would require an additional layer of, they need multiple algorithms to, instead of layering them, they need an algorithm to promote it, then to check it for ads, and then to demote it, and then it just wouldn't make sense because the algorithm runs on all videos, whatever their content is. So if you want to succeed in YouTube, I think that right now, if you want to make content that is not explicitly advertiser friendly, and there's probably perks to the AdSense deals because you might get additional promotion that's not necessarily relevant or part of the system. But I think that if you don't monetize your content and it is trackable to some extent, I think that with likes and shares and views and whatnot, I think you'll do better. Where am I at here? God, I'm almost an hour. You know what? I didn't want to stream this long. I wanted to have a nice little 35-40 minute stream, but I'm at 52 minutes already. 53 minutes already. I'm going to finish this up before an hour, but YouTube has continued to push basically to the U.S. broadcasting standards for content. They're not quite there yet, but expect that to come in the near future. I've been saying this for 2 or 3 years. 2 years now? 3 years? I don't remember when the first video I made about this was. Probably in 2016, I think. Probably after the first adpocalypse. Second adpocalypse. First adpocalypse. We'll call it the first one. 2016-ish, whenever. First time I talked about this. I could see the writing on the wall with the YouTube Heroes program. They want YouTube content that they monetize to be family friendly. And the Heroes program was supposed to, I think, encourage people, especially monetized content, to be more family friendly. And I think that it probably worked to some extent. I don't even know if I'm sure they still do the program, but I don't know. I kind of got distracted there by two thoughts at the same time because I started talking about YouTube Heroes and I was trying to remember my old video about it. But I think that, so this is why I need to do more pre-recorded content, which I said I was going to do last time I did one of these things. I was going to do more because I discovered Health Ranger on Twitter, who has been very quiet lately. But I had a reason for not following through with that, mostly because a relative of mine, actually my godmother, recently died of cancer. And she was very into a lot of this type of stuff. And I felt kind of awkward about... I mean, she was somebody that whenever I saw like the anti-vax stuff get posted on Facebook, I immediately jumped on it and challenged her on it. And one time even saying to her, this is the type of stuff that gets people killed. Stop doing this. But as somebody who had cancer and somebody who was trying to fight it with essential oils and organic cleaning products, it was her choice. And my arguments for or against her reasoning for that wasn't going to make a difference. So, that being said, I let it go, and you know, and that didn't necessarily extend her life at all. So I will eventually get to that stuff because it still bothers me, but I want to not deal with that directly right now. I guess is probably the best way to put it. Lastly, you may noticed the beard's a little longer. Haven't really trimmed it in about a month or so. Not that that matters, but it's also about a month ago that I started a high-protein, low-carb diet. Trying to drop some pounds. After spending the last 2 or 3 years trying many more appropriate, eating methods, this one seems to be working, at least for now. But my MO seems to be that I do it for a while and then it stops working, and then I continue to do the same thing for several months before I change it again when things start going backwards. And the problem is I've not been working out a whole lot in the last couple of weeks because the first couple of weeks getting into this, I was just tired all the time and I wasn't getting enough sleep, which didn't help. But now I'm getting more sleep. So now it's probably time to start going back to the weight room, which is just over there, and hitting the weights again. I was also giving my shoulder rest because what my doctor thinks was bicep tendonitis, and I was on some corticosteroids for 12 days or whatever. It seems to be feeling better. It no longer hurts when I sleep on it, like the next morning. But I can still feel that it's not completely up to snuff. So I think what I'm going to do, particularly because it's a bicep issue, like where it bothers me is right at the head of the top of the bicep where it meets the shoulder girdle here. I'm just not going to do anything with curls. I'm going to stick to the 4 main powerlifting movements. That is bedlift, bench press, bedlift, bench press, and squat, bench, and deadlift, and overhead press. I'm going to, for the next week or so, only do those things. I will do, including the warm-up sets, maybe 10 sets each of stuff, getting progressively heavier. But I'm skipping all accessories for now. Nobody really care about any of that stuff, but I do. It is something that I do on a regular basis. One of my New Year's resolutions is to be able to qualify for nationals, USAPL nationals, based on my lifting totals and my weight. And in order to make that easier, I'm trying to drop a few pounds and gain some muscle by the end of the year. My current lifting totals, based on my estimated 1 rep maxes, because I'm still not lifting as much as I can, but I'm lifting, is around 12 or 1300 pounds, combined bench press, deadlift, and squat. I need to get that up to 15 something. I don't see how that would be a problem necessarily by the end of the year, except for the fact that I don't have enough weights. I have a total of 510 pounds in Olympic weights. So I got to buy some more of that in order to, because I can probably deadlift that at least once. But in order to get my numbers up high enough and not have to do 15 repetitions of 510 for a deadlift, I probably need to get 50, 90, 100 and some pounds more worth of weights. I just haven't spent the money on it yet. So, but because of my shoulder, well, bicep, but my shoulder area here being so sore, I get my bench press up to 350-ish, and then I hurt my arm again, basically. I think my estimated 1 rep max is, or was, about 354. I probably could have pushed that a little heavier, but again, I took the time off for a little bit of healing and stuff, and so I may have lost a few pounds on that, and I'll work my way back up. And I'll hopefully work my way back up without re-injuring my arm, but it seemed to be that the last time I had a problem like this, I just took a couple of months off. And I started working out slowly again, and I progressed up to a point where I was good doing, 320, 330, and the minute I got above 350, suddenly my arm hurt again, and it wasn't getting any better. So, who knows what the hell I'm doing. But I'm sure whoever is subscribed to my YouTube channel in particular, who is sitting through this, who I don't think anybody's going to sit through this to the end and learn about this stuff anyway. That's one of my goals. I'll drop weight. I'm coming down from 316.4, I want to say, as of February 4th. February 4th. It is now March 17th, and I am 293-ish. So I dropped 25 or so pounds. 20, somewhere between 20 and 25. I'm tired. My wife apparently just called me to tell me she's probably on her way home with the kids. She went to her mom's house, which is why I'm doing streaming now. But I had to go do some meal prep and get my food ready for next week. So I'm going to cut it off here now that we're over an hour. Oh well. Thanks for watching. If you watched. If not, cool. That didn't make any sense. Goodbye and hello. As always.